Welcome to Take 5, your 5-minute inspirational message from Solid Rock Drogheda. We hear a lot about recycling today. And I have to say, you know, with the way we got the green bin, well, my green bin is always full after Christmas with all the stuff that needs to be recycled. But recycling is nothing new. God has been recycling for ages. In fact, the way that our water system works in planet Earth is a wonderful form of recycling. Wastewater ends up in rivers and ends up flowing down to the sea, and then the sun shines on the sea and the water evaporates up into the clouds, and it comes down from the clouds as rain back into reservoirs and rivers, and we use it again to keep the same water keeps being recycled again and again and again. Now we take that as something, we take it as something for granted, but people didn't always realize how that happened. Pierre Perrault, he lived in the 17th century and was a lawyer, and he was the Receiver General of Finances for Paris. Basically, he was a tax collector. He collected all the taxes in Paris for King Louis XIV. And then whenever there was a bit of a revolt among people about the amount of taxes they were paying, Louis XIV gave everybody a tax holiday. The problem was that Pierre Perrault had already spent some of the money that he was expecting to collect as taxes, and he ended up bankrupt. And so he lost his job. And he started dabbling in amateur science, and he began thinking about water. Where did the water in rivers and streams come from? Because at that time, people said there's no way there's enough water comes out of the sky in rain to be able to fill all these great rivers. And come to think of it, where did the rain come from anyway? We know rain falls out of the sky, but how did it get up there? And so Pierre Perrault developed what's known as the theory of the hydrological cycle. He was the one who worked out and proved, actually, by the amount of rain that was coming down and that water only permeated into the soil a maximum of 2 meters, and there was plenty enough rain for all the great rivers and everything else. He basically proved how this cycle took place, this recycling of water that God's been doing since the creation of the earth. Now, that was a great scientific discovery, and everybody looks back on it and thinks how clever he was, and he was clever to come up with that. But maybe he should have asked his brother Nicholas about it, because his brother Nicholas was not a lawyer, was not a scientist. His brother Nicholas was a doctor of theology. And as a doctor of theology, Nicholas Perrault would definitely have known the book of Job. Now, sometimes you've got to be a little bit careful in how you interpret the book of Job, because the book of Job, if you remember, is basically a lot of it is a conversation that takes place between Job and his 3 friends. And God specifically says that what the 3 friends said was not good, but Job did not sin in what he said. And the reason why I'm stressing that is because I've heard preachers standing up, and I've heard people trying to introduce an offering by quoting what Job's friends said, and says, God says in the book of Job. And I'm sat thinking, no, God didn't say that in the book of Job. God recorded that Job's friends said that, and it was not good. But what Job said was good. And there's another character who also comes into the book of Job called Elihu, and he comes in right at the end, and what he speaks is good and is truth as well. Well, you know, in Job 26, verse 8, Job himself said this about God: he wraps up the waters in his clouds, yet the clouds do not burst under their weight. Which is a wonderfully poetic way of summing up how those clouds that float in the air, how are they holding water? But then Elihu in Job 36, 27 and 28 said this: he draws up the drops of water, evaporation up from the sea, which distill as rain to the streams. The clouds pour down their moisture, and abundant showers fall on mankind. And so Job and Elihu, between them, basically outlined the hydrological cycle. The fact that water is, it basically is drawn up by evaporation. It then distills as rain. It falls, it fills the streams, and showers fall on mankind. And yet, you know what? It didn't take a scientist to show that to Job. It simply took the revelation of the Holy Spirit. You see, the Bible is the most wonderful book. The Bible is not a scientific textbook, and it's wrong to treat it as if it is, but there's an amazing insight into how the world works that scientists only discovered thousands of years after some of the parts of the Bible were written. And there we see it again in the book of Job. Thank you for joining us for this Take 5. I would invite you to join us again next time for another Take 5, your 5-minute inspirational message from Solid Rock Drogheda.